Ladies with gentle hands. I finally fixed my mic.
Welcome to Swords of Podcast. My name is Adam.
And my name is Thomas. Now, we have kind of a special episode today, so this one is releasing on Black Friday, so we thought stick with the vibe and let's just talk about everything about money. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to everybody. And what do you say, Adam? Let's just get right into it.
Let's do this thing.
All right, so I have 5 topics that I set aside, just some questions. I'll ask you, Adam, we'll get your thoughts and just see what we think. So the first one on my list today is proxies. So I'm not going to go too specific into questions to start. What's your opinion just in general when you hear the word proxies? What kind of connotations does it bring up, and what's your experience with them in the past? We'll start there, Adam.
Yeah. So disclaimer, we're probably going to talk about proxies for, I would assume, the majority of this episode. This is probably going to be the longest topic. But my experience with proxies has been generally good. I think a lot of people try to perpetuate the narrative that when you allow people to play with proxies, it takes the fun out of the game, and then everybody is playing super, turbocharged decks, and everybody has a Candelabra of Thanos in their deck, and everybody has a Gaia's Cradle. But my experience with playing against people who own proxies has never been that. So overall, my view, just the overarching view of proxies, is okay. Why do you ask, Thomas?
Yeah, so in general, it's kind of like what you said. There's just a bad stigma when it comes to people using them. Now, as we know, CEDH is incredibly proxy friendly because you're playing with really expensive cards. But when you get into those lower brackets in more of your casual tables, sometimes they can be looked down upon. I personally have never ever had an issue if someone's like, I'm running proxies, is that fine? Yeah, A-okay with me. And I don't want to say that people that go the other direction with it are lame. I don't want to put that out there, but sometimes it's just like, just know the people you're playing with. If it's someone that's not cool with it, like that kind of sucks. But I don't really see a reason to be mad, 'cause like we're all just having fun, and we don't I don't love there always being like a barrier behind playing the game that we love. Now, the other side of things that I wanted to talk about, and this is the big thing that we've had experience with, is being able to test cards before you buy them. So, in general, I don't always love just, building a deck and saying I need to buy these cards before I can play with it. And a lot of the time too, if I do buy cards online, sometimes they'll take a while for shipping and all that. So, if I want to start playing with them now while they're in transit, right? I'll print out some proxies and throw them in, at least until I can get them swapped out. But like I just mentioned, right? Being able to like test your decks, I think is the biggest draw for me when it comes to proxies. So, what do you think, Adam? I know you haven't done it maybe quite as much as I have. I've done it quite a few times, but what do you think when it comes to just being able to like test things out and do that kind of thing?
I'm all for it. That my deck building style is very different from most people. I build a very large deck list, much larger than 99 cards, and then basically the first 99 that I'm able to accumulate, whether that is through my own collection, trading, local game stores, whatever, I sleeve up that 99 and I play that, and then I keep adding cards and making cuts and additions to decks. But that's also because I play mostly casual. When you play it at high level and at CEDH tables, it makes sense that you want to practice your deck. You want to have a final, perfectly optimized deck list. And so anytime that I want to test a deck, I will use these art cards. They have art on the back, and then the opposite side of them is mostly white. And I will just take these art cards because they're the same thickness and they're the same size as Magic the Gathering cards, and I will put those in sleeves. I'll write what the card is on the art card, and then I will write the abilities or whatever, and then play with it like that. And I have a very large stack of art cards that I keep for that purpose specifically. And obviously, if I'm playing against someone with these proxies, it's painfully obvious that they are proxies. I think what you said makes sense. Like if you want to test the deck and the other players at your pod are cool with there being proxies, I'm not going to rain on anybody's parade. Like, go ahead and proxy whatever you want.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that kind of, I mean, not really. It segues a little bit into the other big thing that I wanted to mention about proxies, and that is with duplicates, right? So there are cards out there that are really expensive. Like you got your fetches, your shocks. Those are generally going to run you 15, anywhere between $15 and $30. And my philosophy, and weigh in on this, Adam, on how much you maybe agree or disagree on excuse me, with me on this one. But if you buy, a copy of a more expensive card, I don't really see a whole like much of the point in getting multiple copies to put it in multiple decks. Now, we're going to go back a little bit into the deck building thing. I know me and you kind of agree on this one a little bit as well. We don't love putting the same card in every single deck, right? So generally, try and mix things up between deck lists, and that helps with that side of things. But if there's, CDH is different because those are almost always going to have the same cards. But that's my other thing too. Is in my main CDH deck, I do have original copies of almost all these cards, and that's kind of one thing I'm working on, and we will touch on that a little bit later in this episode. But if I'm going to be using these cards in a bunch of decks, I have one real copy, and I'm good with that. And that's why I don't have any problem at all with proxying them if I'm going to throw them in other decks. And that's something I've talked with other people about. Generally, from what I can tell, a lot of people kind of agree with that sentiment because, they're expensive cards, and you get the copy to say, hey, yes, I do own this card, but I'm not going to get more. One is good, proxy the rest. What do you think about that, Adam? I don't know how much you've done that or if you've thought too much on that kind of idea specifically of just of owning one, proxying the rest.
I'm super okay with that philosophy. I mean, when you have the copy of the card already, what's to stop you from just swapping it between decks when you played anyway? Like it's just kind of a pain to do that. So, like, telling someone that you're not okay with them proxying a card that they own seems kind of foolish to me. Like, oh, how dare you save time by not swapping this card between decks every time you use it? Like, that to me, that
Yeah.
that seems totally backward, um, from what the game should be about. And that's, I mean, we shouldn't be manufacturing these barriers to entry um, based on financial ability. That seems very uh, anti commander in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And that's actually a good point too, is just the amount of effort it does take, right? To take a card from one deck and put it in another one every time you want to play something different is ridiculous, and I think that's what you're really saving time on as well.
Mm.
I mean, you're saving money on not buying the other cards, you're saving time, and they always say time is money, right? So I think that all, we do agree, and I hope that there's a lot of people out there that agree with us. From what I can tell, I mean, it really depends, where you're going, what types of events you're playing in, but I feel like for the most part, there's most people aren't having problems with these kinds of things, but it's along the lines of the minority speaks so loud sometimes that you think that it's the like the general consensus that people are saying that this is bad and you shouldn't be doing it, right? But I think a lot of people out there are really cool. We exist in such an amazing community, right? And that's what I love about it. So that's that's generally our thoughts on proxies. Did you have anything else to add just about proxies, Adam, before we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to kind of mention a story. There was a gentleman at one of the game stores that I frequent, and before I was getting into CEDH, um, or as I was beginning to get into CEDH, I was playing games with this guy, and um, I was talking about, how I this was back before before Plagon was actually fully CEDH, while it was still kind of a bracket four. Um, so I didn't have any of the expensive cards, didn't have any of the mana rocks. And I'm like, yeah, I was telling him maybe this week I'll proxy a bunch and I'll bring this back and I'll actually be able to, stack up with you guys. And he was like, no, we don't play with proxies here. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I I I kind of took that philosophy to heart, and I realized that I did sort of want to build the deck with real cards. Um, so once I took a few weeks and I put the deck pretty much fully together, sort of a budget version of the deck, but still with all real cards, and I started beating him. He doesn't want to play with me anymore. So sometimes the people that aren't okay with proxies just end up not being good sports in general.
Yeah, I was hoping you would bring that up. That was one of the ideas when I was thinking about this episode that that has stuck with me because that is a story. That is a good story that you have. Um, that kind of brings us into our next topic though. And this is just about buying and selling cards. So, Adam, I was hoping you could touch on this subject because you have done a lot more selling and, well, let me say both sides. You've done a lot of buying collections and selling stuff on TCG Play or other places. So, can you speak to your experience there? And also, I know that's a little bit of what we did when we were at Magic Con. That's a big thing a lot of people go to is selling it in person. So, do you want to touch a little bit on just your experience in those areas?
In what way?
Just in general, I mean, I would say is it worth it? What was your like how much work is it? Just
Oh,
what kind of what everything what all goes into the process of buying collections and selling your cards and rinse and
mm.
repeat. Yeah.
Well, so oftentimes when I would buy collections, it was from people who had already tried to take their collections to a local game store or something. Um, Now, you'll find if you try to sell a large collection of cards, they will the game store will only typically pay between 30 and 40% of the total value in cash. And depending on where you are, sometimes it'll be even less. So a lot of the people that I bought collections off of were people that had, like I said, already gone to game stores, already seen like, oh, you're only paying me 40% of what it's worth. Like, why would I sell it to you? Um, and so smaller people, smaller sellers like myself, when I used to do this, would, we can offer quite a bit more than that, um, compensate people better for their collections. Um, because so obviously when a game store buys a collection, the only gain they're going to see from that collection being purchased is they're going to immediately try to resell it. So sometimes those LGSs can't also resell it for full value. So they have to find a way to ensure that they 100% will profit from the purchase. Um, and so that forces them to charge a lot less. But where smaller sellers like myself, like I said, when I used to buy collections, where I would see most of the gain is I would do my best to sell the cards that I bought under, a little bit under market value. So I would sell them so the turnaround would be fast. And then I would just try to sell enough to make back what I spent on the cards. So then the only gain that I would realize from that transaction was I would net a bunch of cards. I would never necessarily net a bunch of money. Um, Obviously, I have made a little bit of money doing it, but most of where my collection from is bits and pieces from other people's collections that I didn't want to sell or cards that I needed that happened to be a part of the collection. And I think buying your magic cards like that and kind of fleshing out a collection um, by purchasing others' collections is actually a really efficient way to do it. Now, obviously, that is totally dependent on who you buy the cards from. Sometimes you can have very bad experiences with meeting people, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, whatever you do. You can have good and bad experiences. You can have people that, I mean, I've had people who um, laugh at my offer and then later come back and accept it. I have, sometimes you're buying cards off of people who don't understand the value, and so you need to make sure that um, that you're being fair with your evaluation of it, what everything's worth, and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and it definitely is a lot of work. That's why I've kind of let that go by the wayside when we started this podcast, just because it's so time consuming. But I would recommend if you're trying to, like I said, if you're trying to build a collection, and you're trying to flesh out like, oh, I want to have a bunch of bulk that I need, that I can look for cards in and stuff like that, I would definitely recommend purchasing collections in bulk.
Yeah, it's something that I mean we've talked about it. I tried to get into, but what I found the toughest is just finding good collections to buy. And you you were telling me like you were on Facebook Marketplace every day, multiple times a day looking, and I wasn't nearly as invested in it because I had yet to really dive deep, but that's where I found the issues is like finding these for decent prices in the first place. and
Hmm.
and even then when you're buying off of like Facebook or whatever, it's hard to gauge really the value of what you're buying because maybe there's not great pictures or you never know. So that is definitely a little bit of a barrier too to get in. Buying collections is probably the biggest, like the deepest I would say that you can go into that rabbit hole. But then on the other side, we're playing Magic. We're going to pre-releases, buying sealed, and you're just pulling cards. So Adam, how do you make the decision between what is going to go into a trade binder versus what is going to be like an automatic? I need to just go and sell this card. I don't know how much you've done there. I know we both have little trade binders. PSA too. Trade binders are amazing. You should always bring them whenever you're doing stuff because you're always going to find people with trade binders, and it's the best value because, like Adam was saying, when you sell, you're almost always going to take some sort of loss on the value of the card because it's hard to sell it at value because people aren't gonna want to. They're gonna look for those deals, so it's easier to sell them for the cheaper that they are. But Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about that of just the decision of, hey, what's going in my trade binder and what is just going to be sold?
Hmm. So obviously the things that will go in my trade binder, and my trade boxes as I now have, like I have way too many cards to put in a singular binder or even really five binders now. But the things that I keep in that area are things that I think will appreciate. They're cards that don't necessarily. So a lot of times you'll see spikes in prices from when a new commander is announced that a lot of people want to play. Like for example, those recently we had Avatar come out, and before everything was spoiled, that the three color um, Katara that doubled all your ally triggers, people
Katara the
started buying up.
Fearless.
Correct. People started buying up copies of cards that there were two cards. There was one that taps for mana for each ally you control, and then there was one that lets you draw a
Great
card for each
Divide
ally you
Guide.
control. No,
Oh, what?
there were cards from
Oh,
it was from
yes,
a
yes, yes,
previous
yes.
set.
Sorry, I was thinking. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah, I
just
know.
threw an
Yeah,
ally
yeah,
together last night. Yeah, sorry. Go
yeah.
on, go on.
And so people started buying up these cards, and so what's going to happen is those cards are worth quite a bit right now. People have been pulling them out of their bulk rare boxes and selling them or trading them or whatever. But then as these decks, as people take apart the decks or they don't play it as often, or they as the demand falls and the hype from the ally tribal stuff dies down, those cards will also go down in value. So things that will go in my trade binder are often things like, I don't know. One that I like to think of is like Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond. Those two cards will probably maintain their value for the rest of time, barring reprints and things like that, because they are two combo pieces that go in basically every aristocrat deck ever. They go infinite with each other. They're both the same color. Those cards will probably keep their value forever. Um, and things like shock lands and fetches, things that people always need for decks, always looking for. There's high demand. Until those are reprinted, those maintain their value. So those are things that you want to look out for and get while you can. For example, with the Edge of Eternity set that just came out, um, I all of the shocklands from that set that I pulled from collector boxes and whatnot, I kept a hold of those, and those are still in my binder. I trade them off. I've maybe traded one of them away so far, but I try to keep those around until we start getting whispers that there might be a reprint, and then I will try to either sell them or trade them away. Um, So, like I said, keep things in your binder that you think will appreciate in value, generically good pieces, staples, things that maybe have seen a reprint recently and you don't think will get a reprint in the future. That's normally what you want to look out for, things that will appreciate in value.
Yeah, in so our binders look a lot different. Um, in general, well, I have two binders. I have one binder which, by the way, it hurt me a little bit earlier when we were still talking about proxies and you were talking about defacing your art cards because you know how much I love art cards. Whenever anyone pulls them, like I don't know why everyone like wants to throw them away. I've met like a couple people that are kind of on my vibe, but I love art cards. They're beautiful and it's cool because it just kind of it's like a little extra bit from the set. So whenever someone pulls it and they don't want it, I'm like fork them over. That's all mine. And I have pages and pages now full of just art cards, and that is one of my favorite things. And sometimes, and I'm sure you've seen this in either locally or people have seen this stuff online, but I for lack of a better word, you have like you like your meme binders. For example, right now in this avatar set, I have started my It'll Quenchia pages and my Toph pages. So every single copy of Toph that I pulled, they're all with outside of the one copy of Toph that I need for my Toph deck. Every other one is going in the binder just so I can show my collection of my favorite character from one of my favorite shows in my favorite game, and that is Toph. So a lot of people do that. I love doing that. And then the last part of that binder that I have is all of the cards that are special to me personally that I would never trade, but I want them to be kind of on display for myself. And then I have my actual trade binder. So my actual trade binder, I generally try and fill it with cards that I think are going to be in high demand. Now my expensive cards are obviously going to go there because it's also a little bit of like protection for them. But the cards that I think people are gonna like, and Adam, I know that you do this as well. So commander staples, those get set aside because people are always needing them, and then maybe alternate arts sometimes. That's a little spoiler for what's coming later this episode, but that's generally what I do with my trade binder. Like I said, Adam is way more into the like price trends and all that stuff than I am. And you guys know this from watching the podcast. I talk about it like literally every single time is how much of a sucker I am for art and all that stuff. So I really just like, getting the nice arts and making my decks look pretty and all that stuff. And so I don't go super crazy on getting cards because I think they're valuable and sitting on them and doing all that stuff. I just I trade for the cards that I like. So that's me. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that we're missing, Adam. I mean, that's two big philosophies. Is we have everyone on my side, all the pigs that like the slop. I'm gonna be. By the way, I don't know if you can tell. I'm gonna be saying that for like ever now. That's still just one of the
Mm-hmm.
funniest things. Um, and then there's people that are like more on your vibe with the actual pricing and tracking those trends and stuff. Are we missing anything? Do you think, Adam, when it comes
Well,
to
keep in
what's
mind that keep in mind, guys, that these two philosophies do not have to be mutually exclusive. Like
yeah
you know, I try to keep the big thing is Thomas and I obviously we have a podcast about this card game. Like we spend so much time out of our day. We think about I dream about Magic the Gathering. Like I we spend so much money and time into this hobby that for me, one of the things I sort of have to do to justify this hobby is make it reasonable financially. Like for me to be as into this card game and have thousands of dollars in decks and more thousands of dollars in cards that I'm trading and selling and buying and whatever. Part of that like I have to at least get some sort of leg up as far as making sure that I'm not totally putting myself in a hole financially to support this hobby that I love so much. Um,
yeah
but that doesn't mean that I'm this hustler that does nothing but consider card value all day. Like I still play the game. I love playing the game. It just slightly dictates what cards I'm willing to let go of. And the big thing to make the hobby um, to make the hobby financially sound for yourself is selling or trading cards into hype. So that thing I mentioned earlier with those ally cards with the new avatar set and the ones that, tap for mana or um, tap to draw you cards, those cards aren't going to be worth more than $1 in a few months. But if you own them right now, you could probably still sell them into the hype. People will pay a lot more for those cards right now because they're building Qatar, they're building these ally tribal decks, and the hype will die eventually. So having these cards and maybe not necessarily tracking price trends, but thinking of what cards you might have in your bulk rare box that might be worth a little more, um, it is something nice to think about and consider. And when you have your Thomas and I use Mana Box for our collections, and so when you have your entire collection categorized in Mana Box, it will tell you when card prices are spiking. You can look through and see what cards are worth the most, what their percentage of price increases are, and you can do very well and sort of profit to an extent and increase your collection's value by riding those price trends a little bit. Um, but that doesn't stop me from buying juicy cards that I like that probably aren't going to keep their value. Like I may not be a full-fledged pig and I may not be fully sold on all the slop yet, but I still enjoy having nice looking cards. Like for example, the Appa deck that I'm constructing, I am not buying the base copy of Appa. I will be acquiring a foil full art or foil showcase version from Thomas because I want the commander to look nice. And there's definitely something to be said for that. So don't let if you're like me and you love the analytics of this stuff and you love um and you love the hobby for that, don't let that stop you from just having a good time because I work very hard to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I apologize. I did not want it to come across that Adam is some sort of shark. That's my fault. Yeah, we are. He just is definitely a little bit more on the other side. Um, Not to say that there aren't sharks out there, so definitely be careful. But, to each their own because that is, this is a way of making money because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are they? If I'm not mistaken, collectibles is the highest risk, highest reward investment option. There's the safe stuff like what stocks and bonds. I don't remember. They taught us this forever ago, but if I'm not mistaken, collectibles are highest risk, high reward, and that maybe goes more along the lines with like Pokemon, which is just a nightmare right now. But it's not to say that some people aren't successful. So if you're successful, honestly, applause, good on you because that is not easy. Like Adam said, it takes a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, I lose money on things all the time. Like I make mistakes in this. Sometimes
yeah,
I totally botch the price trends, and it just happens. But also, I don't. Uh, my life is not invested into this. Like, yes, I love this hobby, and this is, my favorite thing I do every day. Pretty much is talk about Magic the Gathering. I don't. I don't let it totally ruin me financially because I don't know. I don't go all in. I've got a big stack of chips, and I'll maybe put one on red and put one on black every now and then.
yeah. And the one thing I'll say too, I know this is kind of backtracking a bit, but with Mana Box, it is super awesome. All the features that they have, and being able to see the price trends of your cards is awesome. But I will say, as a quick little PSA, it can be depressing sometimes when you have this card that's worth a lot of money, and all of a sudden in a day it's down like $20. Like I want to say my Vampiric Tutor, it's all over the place. Sometimes it'll go super high, and then I think right now it's down like 20-25 bucks from whenever I put it in. So just be careful out there, guys. um but yeah, and just in general too, like Adam was saying, be careful. You don't want to go too crazy because it is a lot of fun and we do have fun, but definitely be smart about it. um on the topic of being smart, let's talk about bling decks, shall we?
Yeah,
So, bling decks and pet decks. Adam, would you care to give a quick little explanation on what exactly those are before we talk about our opinions on them?
sure. I mean, I'm sure everybody has their own kind of definition on this kind of thing, But to me, a bling deck is one, or a pet deck is one that you love playing. For a lot of people, it's not necessarily their strongest deck, but it'll often be the deck that they want to build as strong as it possibly can be. Um, I mean, it's often, maybe it's their first commander, their favorite commander, or you know a commander from the favorite set, or whatever, what have you. A lot of people do their own pet decks differently, and a lot of people have totally different definitions of bling. Like a lot of people like the base printing foil, like, oh, I have a cold snap foil of this. And some people like the newer full arts. Some people will get, they'll try to put every card in their deck from maybe the Final Fantasy bonus sheet. And I mean, that my old bling deck used to be Kark Sakashima, and in
Yep.
that deck I tried to have every secret lair printing, and then I also tried to have every mystical archive printing in the Japanese alternate art from Strixhaven. And so when I started filling out the deck with those cards, I found myself putting in cards that were worse just because they had the Japanese alternate art mystical archive printing because they looked so cool. So the deck suffered in power because I wanted to add cards that looked cool. Um, so everybody's got their thing, and what I like about pet decks is they really allow for self expression. Um, like you can really kind of show who you are as a Magic the Gathering player by how you build this deck and kind of what you choose. And it says a lot about you, and I that's probably my favorite part about seeing people with their pet decks. And they always love, like last night I had one of the guys at the LGS hand me a deck, and he's like, "Here, check this out." And it's fun just going through a deck and like seeing the thought process that goes into it, and like, oh, you're playing this. Oh, okay, interesting. And then you keep going, and oh, okay, gotcha. And you figure out what's going on, and that's my favorite part.
Yeah, you honestly hit the nail on the head with that one. That was amazing explanation on both. I think that there's a little overlap here, interesting enough, with bracket one decks in certain situations because that's the kind of the whole idea is that, you're maybe building it around a theme. So some of these you could see in bracket one, and the rest, the other side of it is just like you were saying, getting all the best art. I sometimes find it difficult because I'm completely with you, Adam. I love matching the vibe across the whole deck. So my first real bling deck, if I could call it that, would be my first sliver CDH deck. And so my idea here is I know CDH is super expensive. It's not something I'm gonna right now drop all this money to get the real versions of every card, but I would eventually like to own every card in that deck, and that's why even though it's not the most like the most competitive of CDH decks right now, it's something I'm never going to take apart because that's what I've been working for years now, and I have cards in there that I'll have them, and if I come across an art that is I think fits way better, I'll swap the card out and put the nice one in. Like for example, I just took out Mindbreak Trap to put in the Spider-Man Mindbreak Trap because I love that art so much, and I do that with some other decks kind of, but not to that extent. So that is one of those decks. I think when you talk about a real bling deck, it's it's where you want everything to really match. And pet decks I think definitely fall under a little bit of a different of a category like you were talking about, Adam, with just making it as powerful as possible. So yeah, it is like you said, to each their own. There's so many different ways you can go about it, and the definition really does change with everybody. So why don't we talk about? I know you just mentioned a little bit ago your Appa deck. Currently, because I if I'm not mistaken, your Krug Sakashima, I think you did take that apart.
Oh
If I'm
yeah,
not
years
yeah.
ago.
And so what can you say now, Adam, as to what you would call your current bling deck and what you've done with it, and maybe if you have any others kind of on deck. I know you mentioned Appa, but if there's anything else, what do you have going for you right now?
So, um, I've talked about it a million times on this podcast, and I'll probably keep talking about it. But my favorite deck, my pet deck, is the Most Dangerous Gamer. Um, all of my decks, I try to have matching full art lands. That's just always been a preference of mine. And since I've bought the first few collections that I've bought, like I talked about earlier, a lot of those collections had full art lands. So I am full to the brim of full art lands. So I will never have a deck with just regular basics in it. Um, but I like them all to match. I've got in the Most Dangerous Gamer, I have the unstable. I believe it's the unstable basics. They're some of my favorite basics of all time. And then the deck is it's such a hodgepodge right now. Um, I love foil cards, but sometimes they can be hard to read depending on what set they're from. So the deck is not even close to foiled out. I have a few cards that I've gotten signed, um, but the deck is just a pet deck really. The Bling project on it has been delayed by quite some time, and it's a very slow process because, as you know, I try not to buy cards online when I can. So
Yeah.
it's a very very slow process of blinging it out. But I'm enjoying the process, and it's been going very well.
And to that point, I always have a hard time as well. Kind of like what I mentioned before. It's like if you already have the card, it'll take a little bit to convince yourself that you need to upgrade the card. Like you always might want to hold out until you find it somewhere else. So I'm definitely with you on that. And that's what makes it fun too. It would kind of take away, I think, from the experience of really putting it together if you just went and just dumped all this money and just got the deck as is. Like it is fun to work for it and just see it come together. And it feels good just one by one slotting them out and putting your final product together little by little.
Hmm.
So like I said before, I would say that the first sliver is definitely my bling deck, as you would put it. And when it comes to pet decks, I mean, realistically, this top deck that I'm putting together is going to be mine because my personal definition of a pet deck is something that is never going to be perfect, and you always want to keep working on making it better. I have a tendency to throw a deck together and not think too much about upgrading it because I think that that's a lot of work, and it also says something to have a deck put together in the I'll call it the era of when it was, and maybe some new cards come out and like one by one you maybe slot some stuff out, but in general it's like I put together a deck and move on to the next. But Toph is one of those that it's just that card since it was spoiled. Even now, it's like it's so special to me that I want that to be perfect, and might even make multiple. We'll see, but that's that's kind of where I'm sitting at with my bling deck. And the last thing that I do want to say before we move on is also a little bit of a throwback to the proxies. There are some people that I have seen with amazing, amazing full proxy decks with that just fit some sort of theme. So they're basically bling decks, even though they're made out of proxies, but they fit a theme. And the person I want to shout out is somebody who I played with at my local game store, and he had a Zedru deck, but it was completely proxied, and I want to say that Zedru, it was like George Bush or something, and it was every other card was like a custom something along the lines of like political things because Zedru is a politics deck if you make it that way, and it's so much fun because it fit this theme. Not the most powerful deck, but he put everything in that would really fit that theme of like politics, building around like his George Bush Zedru, and I think that was super super awesome. And actually, Adam, I don't know if you still remember, but we have a custom card that we made.
Hmm.
So that that is a deck that I have been wanting to put together. It's just it takes and that's why it's like a really big shout out to people that do this. It does take so much work because if you want to make like a full proxy like custom card or custom like alternate versions of real cards, you know what I mean, of a full deck, it does take a lot of work, and you also want it to be really really good. So it was what Kellogg Dangerous something, I don't know, it was from the Fallout
Kellogg
set if I'm not
Dangerous
mistaken.
Mind.
Dangerous Mind, yeah, it was from the Fallout set, And uh, so me and Adam actually went to West Virginia University, and the current women's basketball coach, his name is Mark Kellogg. Amazing, amazing coach. We got the chance to meet him. We created a custom version of that card. So we called it Coach Kellogg, right? Coach Kellogg True Mountaineer. And we actually got the chance to get him to sign the copies that we made. We gave him one. He loved it, and it was so awesome. So doing that kind of thing, I think just really adds something to the game. It makes it just so much fun. But it definitely takes a little bit of creative bone. But shout out to
Hmm.
everyone who's out there doing that kind of thing. I think it really makes the game a lot more fun. Did you
Yeah.
have anything else that you wanted to add before
Well,
we moved on?
well, what I like about pet decks is so I'll show you guys this. I don't know how well the camera will handle it, but this is my copy of the Most Dangerous Gamer, and I have washed the borders. It's a galaxy foil, and I have washed the borders off of it with nail polish remover, and so that's my special treatment of this card. But um, I'm also currently commissioning an artist to do an altar on the card, so that I can also have an altar, and then he's also going to make me some tokens for the deck and do that sort of thing. And other things that I've done is I've washed or I've erased the borders off of some of the cards that work as Urza lands. So this deck runs the Tron lands, and so some of the lands that I tutor for that aren't Urza lands, but that help with that, I have washed the borders off. So like stuff like Vesuva and um, a lesser known Urza land, Urza's Workshop, that is another Urza land, but has never been printed in white border. I've erased the borders off of them so that they all sort of match. And I love doing little things like that with the decks, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that goes along with pet decks as a whole, is like those little things that you do that really make the deck your own.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is also kind of moving into our next topic. A lot of these, I know that we're kind of seeing it now, Adam, is they all kind of blend together. Um, but the next thing I wanted to talk about is actually alternate arts, right? Or I don't know, I guess we can maybe talk foils versus non-foils, and then like I guess bonus sheet is something here, secret layers, every alternate version of a card. And I know this is a super wide category, Adam, but what do you think on about actually going and getting specific versions of cards? I know it's a little bit of what we already talked about, but do you think it's worth it? When do you think it's worth it? And the big thing that I also wanted to ask you is sometimes we know that alternate versions of cards can be worth less than original printings. And sometimes that is to do with the card being so old that it has like an old border, like from like an old like Urza's set or some whatever it is. So those are a little bit more understandable. But sometimes these alternate versions of cards can be worth less, which I think is kind of crazy. But that's just knowing me, who is big on like alternate arts and stuff. I think regular looking cards is just so plain. Same thing with basic lands. I know we've talked about it before. Everyone says this. It's like, what's the point of even printing, regular border basic lands? Just make them all full art. But some people may be a little greedy or something. But do you have anything you wanted to add just about that? I know it's along the lines of what we've been talking about, but do you have anything you
Well,
wanted
so
to throw in?
there's there's sort of a nuance around the cost difference between like the base printing and like full arts or showcase arts. So there's the the most common reason why some of the showcase arts can be less expensive is because they're just generally not liked. Um, a big example of this is from the Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. There was that like parchment looking, grayed out, grayscale, whatever you want to call it. I forget what the real name of it, but that was their showcase art.
Abdel has one,
And
I think.
yeah, and people hated that. I mean, those copies of those cards do not go for much. And then another example would be the Kaldheim printings. I used to know what these were called, but
Ooh,
there was a
I want to
special.
say it's like Foretell. I know it's not. It's something.
Yeah,
Oh, I
there
know.
was a
Yeah.
there was a specific Kaldheim exclusive frame that you could get cards in, and those were also not very popular. So some of those are cheaper than the base copies. But then there's also something that happens where it's purely scarcity based. So something like I believe it was in Dominaria Remastered where they came out with those stained glass or no,
Yeah.
Multiverse Legends,
Yes.
that's what it was. Where they
Yes.
had those stained glass reprints of certain cards. And for the most part, those stained glass versions are not worth any more than the base copies, if not less. Obviously, some of that could be maybe the frame's not as popular, but I think most of what it is because the market is very saturated with them. Um, the set was printed to oblivion. There's a lot of copies of those art styles floating around, and I think and so because maybe they were reprints of a card that hasn't been printed in a while. So it was a set that maybe came out when demand was lower for Magic the Gathering as a whole, so there was not as many copies of that card printed. So just because the other card may look nicer to some people doesn't mean that collectors will want to own it at all because maybe the base copy is more scarce. And that's sort of what we're seeing with older foil cards is like, yeah, there might be, a flashy new Necropotence art, but like the older copy that's a foil is still probably going to go for more money than all those cards combined, just because either the nostalgic factor or more than likely the scarcity.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the same thing about nostalgia playing a part in it when it comes to the like older borders, because I'm a big fan of old border stuff. Like if it's available in an old border, I'll get it. Like my personal Dan Dan deck, for every card that had the like original border, even if it was like a list reprint, that's what I sprung for because I kind of wanted to match that vibe. And so I can see the hype in that, but like I say all the time, I am big into those alternate arts, and it actually, if anything, kind of helps me because if I would rather get that alternate art and it's going to be cheaper, like I'm honestly all for that. It still just kind of blows my mind because I don't know. Sometimes I just think it's like why wouldn't you, like, if if you have to settle for like this regular, not even borderless, it's like I'm not super with all that, but I do understand. I do understand where some people are coming from. And when it comes to foil too, that's the biggest thing, is the pringling. So people aren't going to want to get those foils, and maybe some of those alternate arts could have a similar issue because they're putting more ink on it or something. So I do get all that. And the one thing I want to say, I think that it would be. I'm going to say it was Final Fantasy, and I'm probably going to be wrong when they started doing that version of like the bonus sheet where it's just text on an image.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember this, Adam, when those first came out, I was like, this is like the ugliest thing that I've ever seen. And long story short, I own that version of Ragavan now because there was just something about it that called to me. It was basically the same price, and I'm like, I don't know, there's something about it that's just kind of calling my name. And they did that for this Avatar set bonus sheet, but in this case it's legit screen grabs from the show just with the text on them. And that style of art for these bonus sheet cards, it is growing on me a lot. I don't really have a problem with it anymore. I actually do like them. It's simplistic. It honestly kind of is cool not having any of those like boxes around anything. And for certain cards, I'm definitely getting a lot more with it. But one thing I'll say is, because I was just having this conversation the other day at my LGS with some people about this Avatar set bonus sheet specifically, and the community hates it. But for Avatar, the reason why is because they're legit screenshots from a show that was made like what 20 years ago, so they're not really high quality. And
Mm-hmm.
there's I think for Spider-Man maybe they did the same thing, but they had oh no, it was SpongeBob. Yeah, for the SpongeBob Secret Lair, they basically did the same thing, but they had
No,
the
no, 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 no.
original art. Oh, something
They
else.
they they redrew that art.
That's
They weren't
that
just
okay.
screen grabs.
Bro, you're stepping on my treads. That's exactly what I was gonna say. They brought
Oh,
in the
sorry.
original artist. Yeah, no, you're good. They brought in the original artist to redo the drawings, so they looked really nice. And I understand. Well, this is kind of where the it wasn't really an argument, but this is where what we were talking about is they Wizards could have done that, right? I mean, it definitely would have been expensive. Not like they're like a massive company that could afford it, but like realistically, I don't even think they look that bad. So I don't have a problem with it. And if anything, I kind of like it better because it feels a little bit more authentic, that it's just like a screenshot from the actual show. And my favorite part about them is in the bottom corner, it tells you the episode name and the exact, like the book and the episode number that it's taken from, which is really, really awesome. It's like a nice little thing that they added. So I'm kind of all for that now. And like I was saying, granted, most of this bonus sheet is not cards that are crazy, crazy playable. But I'm not even going to complain that a lot of people don't like it because, it helps people like me that want access to these cards. So, keeping the price low is actually great for me. But last thing I'll say too is going back to the rarity and the scarcity. This dude, this Toph, it's ridiculous. I'm hearing from people that they're pulling it. And it's like, bro, where's some for me? Like, I want this Toph so bad. And the first metal bender, the neon showcase one, and one thing that is really good is I want to say pre-release weekend, it was like right after it released. You couldn't even really pre-order it, but pre-release weekend it was sitting at like $2,300, and then a couple days ago, when last I checked, it was down to like 11 or 1200. So it is coming down, and that's generally what we see with sets when they come out, is that the prices are super high. So if you guys are going to sell, like we were saying before, try and do them right when the sets come out. But they do drop down eventually as more people like open product and more becomes available. So that's the good thing about these more rare cards. But sometimes it's tough out there, trying to get these cards that I like. I know that was a little bit of a rant there, but
Mm.
and any thoughts, Adam? Any more thoughts about
Well,
alternate arts?
the reprints that they've been doing, I think they've only been doing it for Universes Beyond, the one that you're talking about with like the bonus sheet.
Mm.
That the bonus those bonus sheets are sort of they're kind of I'm torn on them is what I'm trying to say. And I think you are too, and honestly, I think a lot of the community is. The problem with them is the way the text looks on the art. Like the text just doesn't something about the way that the text sits on the art doesn't quite work very well. Um, but the problem is the art is so good. Like I love cards with no borders. I love that the art goes all the way to the edges. It looks really sweet, and then obviously it's for the Avatar set, it's screen grabs from the show. Like it's really cool looking art, and it's very fitting. I mean that Mystic Remora is just whew, beautiful.
I just pulled one today, by the way. Just wanted to put that out there.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Foil
not
or
foil. It's
oh
not foil.
still.
But I
Still.
was I really needed that, and so that felt that felt great. It's so
Nice.
beautiful. Oh my god.
But like yeah, the it's like the community is very torn on it, I think, because the art is amazing, but the text doesn't look great on it. So I think people like you, Thomas, are kind of biting the bullet on how awful the text looks on it, just because the art is so nice on a lot of these bonus sheets.
Yeah. Well, I almost think that they fixed it. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at them side by side between the Final Fantasy and Spider-Man in this one, but it feels like they kind of fixed it a little bit. Because I remember when I first saw the Final Fantasy ones, I'm like, this just looks horrible. It doesn't work at all. And then, like I said, slowly they were kind of making sense. But with the Spider-Man and this one, it feels like the placement is pretty decent. Maybe they changed the coloring. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I was so into the art on this set that I'm kind of looking past that. That could be the case. But I'd like to think that they're kind of figuring it out a little bit better. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is just like you said, and we're just biting the bullet because they're so cool.
Yeah,
But
well, maybe not biting the bullet, uh, maybe not actively biting the bullet, but I just mean like mentally or subconsciously biting the
Yeah,
bullet. Like you
yeah,
mind the text a lot less when the art looks so good.
for sure. Well, that actually perfectly segues into the last little topic that I had, and that is just with reprints in general. So, bonus sheet, all reprints, and they're cool because they're alternate arts. You're gonna have reprints in sets. I mean, first one that I can even think of, we just got a brainstorm in the Avatar set. That card's reprinted all the time. You're gonna get commander staples like Soul Ring reprinted in every deck that they make. So, Adam, what is I know that this is probably the most broad thing that I have brought to the table today, but what's your opinion on reprints and you know is Wizards doing too many reprints? Not enough? Do you have any like cards in particular that fit into either of those two categories off the top of your head? Just in general, do you have any thoughts you wanted to share on these?
Well, I think the only people who stand to lose anything from reprints are people that probably shouldn't be engaging in buying and selling Magic the Gathering cards. If if someone is upset enough that they have problems with how Wizards chooses what cards to print new ones or new versions of versus how many new um, new cards they want to release as a whole, I feel like the only people that would get upset enough about that are people that are attempting to hold cards and influence marketplace trends in a predatory way. Um, like there's a reason that people buy reserve list staples and people tell you should always, if you're going to hold cards, you should buy reserve list because they will always go up. Wizards has promised that they will never reprint them. Cards like Soul, think of a card like Soul Ring. It is so powerful. It's like one of the most powerful cards in the format, but it's only $1. And it's because it's reprinted into the ground. Super accessible to everybody, and that's why not a lot of people have a problem with Soul Ring. But people have a lot of problems with a bracket 3 deck running Gaia's Cradle because it's a reserve list card and not everybody can get their hands on it. So I think um, I like the idea of the reserve list. Those cards most likely should not see reprints because they're very, very strong. And they should only be played kind of at higher power level tables. So I'm cool with the market kind of influencing the game there. But I'm a big fan of reprints. Like let the people play the cards. The more you reprint the cards, the more the value goes down, the more accessible the card is. You know, keep reprinting cards, Wizards. Like I don't think anyone who deserves a voice in the community is saying anything bad about how many cards Wizards chooses to reprint, especially when they're going to do awesome stuff like bonus sheets. Such an awesome idea to get new art onto old cards.
Yeah. No, yeah, you know that that's my favorite thing about reprints. I know that the biggest issue is standard, right? So, reprinting cards and the issues could come up with whatever is currently standard legal. But that's the entire point about bonus sheet is that it's not standard legal. And Wizards has had, some ideas that maybe flopped like Jumpstart has never been good, and I think what is it, Avatar Eternal or something? There's something in this set that's like also not standard legal,
Yeah, the
which is
version
which
of
is weird.
the
Yeah.
version of Jumpstart.
Yeah, and I think that that is super awesome that they do that because it gives you the chance to get these cards, make the set more fun to open, and you know, gives us the cards again, new art without the issues of having it in standard. And the big problem, which is actually I thought very interesting, is even though it's not standard legal, some of the time it can ruin the draft experience, which is not something I ever really thought about, but it is a good point with making some of this stuff available in regular packs, right? It that just can't be done, and that's why they go with these jumpstart packs or jumpstart. I think aftermath is something else that they've done, which I guess helps, but it's also those are historically terrible. People hate them. They do that bad every time, And I think Spider-Man, if I'm not mistaken, started off as like a mini set like that, and that's why it's filled with so much garbage, because it was supposed to be like a mini set, and they just made it a full
Allegedly.
set. Yeah,
I don't
allegedly,
believe we have confirmation on that, but it
but it
certainly
seemed
feels correct.
yeah. But so that is a good point. But then that's why we have collector boosters now. Is you have special cards that can only be pulled in these collector boosters, which isn't even going to ruin the draft experience. Now, the only thing I'll say about that is there's not at least with Avatar, because since we're balls deep in it now, there's not a single card I could think that you can only get in the collector booster that you can't get in the regular booster, with the exception of like the neon like showcase cards. Like you have a better chance of getting the alternate art stuff collectors, but it's not to say that you can't see them in play boosters. And even bonus sheet cards show up in play boosters every so often. It's a lot more rare, and maybe there's certain bonus sheet cards that aren't even in them. I wouldn't know. I don't stuff these packs, but so Avatar might be a little bit different, but just in general, like they do some good things to build around that, and I think it honestly just brings the set up for everybody, for people that want to draft it, for people that want to collect it, and all these other things. So yeah, I think reprints are super awesome. And off the top of my head, I can't think of really any cards that I think they do too much. I don't necessarily think there is such a thing as doing too much, but I'm also not a collector, and I know that they have probably a lot stronger of opinions on that on that topic specifically than you or I would. But
Hmm.
that's where I sit on it.
Yeah, let the people have their cards
Yeah,
and stop printing small sets. They don't do well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say, that Assassin's Creed set, I was a very big fan. I bought $1 just to do it. Had some really awesome reprints, really cool like original cards. I thought it wasn't super popular. A lot of people were into it. It kind of sucked how small they were. I want to say that like a box was only like 12 packs or something, or it's probably even different. I wouldn't remember off the top of my head, but that was cool. I don't mind that for like Universes Beyond, like little mini sets that aren't standard legal. I wish they did that still, but I can understand why not, because Assassin's Creed kind of flopped, but it's okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Just talking about money, cards, anything that we you think we've yet to hit today?
Not really, man. I mean, just enjoy the game for everything there is to enjoy, whether that's the financial side of it or just the fun side of it. There's no
Yeah,
there's no right or wrong way to play Magic,
for sure.
except for
Well,
Infect.
that yeah, separate impact. So that is going to do it for our episode here today. It was a lot of fun. Again, we hope that your guys' holiday went really well. Don't go too crazy on Black Friday, but hopefully we touched on some cool stuff today. If you guys have any opinions on this kind of stuff, let us know. Put it down in the comments. And I want to say two things before we sign off. So we just got our official Discord server set up, Swords to Podcast. We we added it to the link tree? I think we did.
I have not yet,
Um,
but it will
we
be by
will.
the time this episode airs.
Yeah. So the invite link to join will be on the link tree. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a ton of stuff in there, whether you want to throw deck lists you're working on or thoughts on the podcast. You can reach us directly there. We have some tables. We can play games. So that's a lot of fun. Go ahead and join that, and we're gonna try and build that up. The other thing is, we are gonna start streaming soon, so playing some games. So if you guys would like the chance to play games with us, get on a stream, we're really looking forward to starting to do that. Meet some of the people, and yeah, that's the big things that we have going on. Did you have anything else? Anything else, Adam?
No, that's it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode, and we will see you on the next one.
Later.